Welcome to Faith Fondue, a podcast featuring author and educator Haley DeMaria and teacher and blogger Ann Strickers. Faith Fondue features a melting pot of topics ignited by a flame, our faith, and guided by the Holy Spirit. It is June 20th. We are in the 11th week of Ordinary Time. This is Season 4, Episode 12, and Ann, with Episode 12, we are halfway through at our halfway point of our 24 episode goal. So of course our goal was 24 episodes in 2024. We are halfway there. It is almost the end of June. Kudos to us for staying on track.
Hey, absolutely.
And welcome. Let's start off with the flame. Anne, what is hot and burning in your world?
Yeah, well, halfway through, and today I understand is the solstice. It is the longest or equal, longest day of the year.
Longest day of the year.
Why am I even struggling with that? That should be a no-brainer. The longest day of the year. Somebody at the gym this morning, Haley, said, "Happy solstice." And I thought, okay, sure. I'm aware. I mean, thank you for the awareness. And I don't know what that means, but since we love to talk about
definitely a B-list holiday, maybe a C-list, but I'll take the extra sun and I'll take the extra heat.
Yes, but then I'm also always a little sad because I love that every day gets longer, and now it's like, hold on to the daylight. So
yeah, I agree.
Happy solstice to our listeners. There's a lot. You put down a couple of notes, and I would like to thank you. In any partnership, any duo, there's somebody that plays certain roles. So you've really kept us on track. I want to give a shout out. Thank you for that. So we are here because we both show up, but I want to thank your leadership in that. So thanks for that.
You are welcome. There are so many times when events happen in my week and I think, I want to talk to Ann about this, or, I wonder what Ann would think about this. So it is you in my brain that keeps me coming back to making sure that we continue to do this.
Well, appreciated. Thank you. So yes, you took some notes on a lot has been happening. Yes. Baseball, basketball, hockey, golf, swimming. And I was asking last night, my friend went to Stone Ridge, and which is the home of Katie Ledecky and another swimmer that qualified. And I was just curious about the pool in Indianapolis, Haley. So I know with the Olympic trials before it was in Omaha, is that correct?
Correct.
And I was just in Omaha. So I just had never really thought. I know sports complexes today are unbelievable. Parquet floors, grass that they move in and out. But a pool to me seems like an incredible feat. So I don't know what you know about the pool in Indianapolis, but I would love to hear a little bit about that.
So it's at Lucas Oil Stadium, which, as you know, is the home of the Indianapolis Colts. So it is a football stadium, but this is not new. So the Olympic trials have been in Omaha for the last, I'm going to say at least 3, maybe 4 Olympiads. U.S. Olympic trials have been in Omaha, and they've built the pool there every time as well. So this is not new. It is a massive feat, as you can imagine. There's some really great time lapse videos out there.
I've heard about that.
Where you can watch them being built. I would recommend that. We can add a link to that to our notes. But it's not new. There was a platform for that, and I think the idea was to take it to a different market. Indiana is a huge swimming state. There's a lot of swim history there. They've referenced that some during trials, and it didn't surprise me at all that they moved it. Omaha's a great city. Certainly, they have the College World Series going on there right now. Perhaps that is why they moved it, because they couldn't have it take place at the same time in terms of hotel space. Yep. But it's been a huge success, I would say, at Lucas Oil Stadium. So we'll see. I don't know if there's a longer contract, but it'll be interesting to see again where it is in 4 years.
And can you tell me about the depth of the pool? Is it 8 feet? Is somebody kind of tried to explain to me that it's harder the deeper the pool is, probably because of the amount of, I don't know, the water, but I was thinking of, so do you know anything about that?
So I couldn't tell you the exact depth of it. It's not harder the deeper it is. It's actually better the deeper it is, because what you want to do, and you'll actually notice on the outside lanes of the pool, there's
Hmm.
extra space, kind of extra lanes, and then the gutters are a big deal.
Yeah.
You're trying to avoid too much. You're trying to get rid of the wake. So you'll hear people talk about fast pools, and everyone wants to, what makes a pool fast? Well, what makes a pool fast is when you have the wake of the swimmers dissipate off the side or down. If you have a shallower pool, first of all, it's not safe to dive into. But
Yeah.
two, you're going to have the wake or the movement of the water bounce off the bottom, bounce off the walls. So the faster the pool is relates to the faster you can kind of dissipate those waves, that wake.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Well, it will, yeah, it's just great prep work for what is to come in Paris. So we get, I mean, is our swim team really strong?
Oh,
Are you,
so
yeah,
so I have always claimed, and I think this is not my claim. It's pretty much well known. U.S. Olympic trials is the fastest meet in the world. It
wow.
is oftentimes as a whole faster than the Olympics. You have swimmers
Wow.
who place third at Olympic trials, and as a swimmer, that just guts you because it guts me for the third place finishers because they're not making the Olympic team. But
Mhm.
that third place time that they swim more often than not would put them in the finals at the Olympics. So it is
Wow.
a really fast meet. You will see swimmers, like Notre Dame's, Chris Guglielmo. And a huge shout out to him because this is Notre Dame's first, swimmer Olympian coming from Notre Dame, and it's been really exciting for those of us as part of the program. Current team, a lot of text messages and excitement and videos going back and forth. But for someone like him, my guess is he is tapered and he is spot on, and his challenge is going to be building up training again so that he is ready to compete in Paris. For someone like Katie Ledecky, who everybody knows she's going to make the Olympic team, she's the best in the world. She's probably the best we've ever seen in her events. She maybe doesn't isn't at the peak of her taper right now, at her peak performance right now, because she's in the middle of training, and her goal is to peak at the Olympics.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there is strategy and logistics that go into swimming. It's not just about diving off the blocks and swimming fast, but this is probably overall the fastest meet in the world.
Wow. Well, that's great. That only increases our appreciation for, yeah, United States swimmers in this event in Indianapolis. Awesome.
Yeah, very
Well, I
fun.
was in Omaha Sunday through yesterday, and yes, the College World Series was there. So I can't imagine having both of those events. Omaha is not a huge town.
Right.
I had been there. A good friend of mine lives there from Notre Dame. I was in her wedding, so I used to go see her as well. It's been some time since I'd been there, and I stayed on Creighton's campus, which was an awesome campus. I love the development of what they've done. Shout out Blue Jays. What a great spot and
Shout out Big
wonderful
East.
facilities. Yeah, exactly. I know. I had to put that in context as well. And when it's a smaller town like that, just that you really feel the energy
Mm-hmm.
of an event like the College World Series, which was underway. The game we were supposed to go to Tuesday night was rained out, but I got to go on Wednesday morning. They rescheduled it for 10 a.m. So we still got to go, still crowded. It's Kentucky, Florida game. Very
Great.
exciting. I had been in the old stadium, Rosenblatt, so I'd never been to this new iteration of the College World Series, but every hotel has tons of baseball, tons of collegiate gear. It really feels like summer, and what a great way to kick off summer for young people. And it's pretty affordable, but for that town, it just must be raucous.
I bet. I bet. Yeah, it's I've never been to the College World Series. That is something I would like to go to. I can only imagine watching
I
that.
was thinking when Notre Dame was in it 2 years ago, and walking around, I cannot imagine if Notre Dame was in it. Like it would just be obvious. I mean, it's already that exciting, but just to have your own school, your own team in it, it can only be that much more special. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I would
maybe we'll get there at some point and we can meet up. Who
I
knows?
think we will, and I will take you up on that. So
Okay.
baseball also, I just got before we started taping, watched the Orioles, who, my team are having a great season, just demolished the Yankees, who have maybe don't have anymore. We might be, I need to look. I'm not sure exactly how the standings are now because we beat them 2 out of 3 in the series, but just beat them 17 to
Nice.
5 in New York, which is really kind of a beating for one of the best teams in the league. But Major League Baseball certainly suffered a massive loss this week. It was, you can always tell, I don't know if this is a good gauge or not, but how social media reacts to the passings of certain individuals, I think is really telling. Obviously, the baseball world was impacted, but everyone seemed to be impacted by the death of Willie Mays, and whether they're baseball fans or not, or whether they were even in the sports world. So certainly he's been present, I think, this week in all of baseball.
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate hearing that because I got a sense of that, Haley, but you being in Baltimore and me being in San Francisco, he was
Totally
Giants led.
different, right?
We are surrounded by it, but just I did get a sense. I got so many text messages from people, sorry for the loss, sorry about Willie. Like the word fam is a word that a lot of young people use now quite a bit. And, we were part of the Notre Dame family, and families use generously, but fam, fam, fam. And then you get this sense of like the Giants family, and whether that's true or not, but he has only been celebrated. It's been such a tribute. You're right, 93 years old. Barry Bonds is godfather. But for the context of the time in which he passed, with this game that's taking place and celebrating the Negro Leagues and the integration of those numbers. And I was at the Negro League Museum in Kansas City on Saturday, and Willie Mays started in the Negro Leagues at the age of 16.
Wow.
And just to think about his participation in that, and then his contribution to MLB, which he was allowed to be in thanks to Jackie Robinson, is just so pivotal. It's really powerful just to think about this life. What a life, right? So many contributions. One of the interesting parts of the museum was there was a woman, and I wrote down her name. She was kind of a Black business owner, Effa Manley, and she was involved in the ownership of Negro League teams, and she was against the integration of Blacks into Major League Baseball because the Negro Leagues had their own sort of power in that they were Black owned. They served the Black community. There was tons of energy and excitement about it. And she said, that players like Willie Mays said that their dream is to play at the highest level, which is Major League Baseball. And then eventually baseball, right? I mean, thanks to Jackie Robinson, they were ushered in, and it's not been easy, but it's been an important part of baseball's history. And she admits, she's like, I'm glad I was wrong, but that it has proved to be good for baseball, obviously. But I appreciated her viewpoint, like just the notion of celebrating these teams for who they were and what they were and what they contributed was very thoughtful. So
yeah, that's interesting.
Willie was on both sides of that fence, but had that dream, and he was one of the all-time greats.
Right. And I'm certainly made an impact in both leagues. It is interesting that just this year and just recently, I don't know if it was in the last month or the last 2 months, but they did combine the record books. They used to have the Negro League records and then Major League Baseball records, and they've now combined them. So it is just a history of the baseball records. And I'm sure his name is all over those in important ways. It's interesting. One of the tweets that I saw that went out after his passing was something along the lines of, okay, well, that's the third. We've lost 3 sports greats, and they named them Bill Walton, Jerry West, and Willie Mays. And when I read it, it was interesting because I thought the same thing before Willie Mays had passed. But in the context of, wow, we've lost 3 basketball greats, at least in my world. And certainly the first was Bill Walton. We mentioned him on our last podcast. And then Jerry West passed away. And then the same day Jerry West passed away, Dick Rosenthal passed away. And Notre Dame people will know him. Maybe college sports fans 30 years ago might know him. If you followed the NBA in the early 50s, you might know him. He was the 4th pick in the first round when he was drafted into the NBA. He played basketball at Notre Dame, but of course, after his career, very successful career as a banker, he was asked to be Notre Dame's athletic director back in the late 1980s. And he was really the first athletic director, certainly at Notre Dame, but perhaps across the country, who was not in the sports world. He was a banker, he was a businessman, he had retired, and he came into Notre Dame as a businessman, again, not with any sports background. And we've seen that trend a little bit more since then, but I'm going to guess that he was probably certainly the first at Notre Dame, probably one of the first in the country to come into college administration without that administrative sports background. And he came into Notre Dame at a time and really elevated Notre Dame from not just a football school, but really a business. And he elevated the Olympic sports. He was a huge advocate for women's sports. He really transformed the athletic department, and certainly was athletic director when I was there, and had just personally a huge impact on my life as well. So he was my rounding out the third: Bill Walton, Jerry West, Dick Rosenthal. It was an emotional email for me to get that last week, and I will be in South Bend to say goodbye to him next week. But not everybody included him in their three, but I will put him alongside Bill Walton and Jerry West.
Yeah, well, that's very tender. That's very, and meaningful to hear that. And I appreciate his leadership and the way that you think about him. So Notre Dame. Is he the one who brought in the NBC contract?
He is. He brought in the NBC contract. He took us into the Big East deal. He just really forward thinking at the time, really visionary at the time. And, for me, as a history major and a former history teacher, you have the big three that are often talked about in history.
Right.
The big three for me were Tim Welsh, Dick Rosenthal, and then Father Malloy, Monk Malloy. They were really the leaders of the university at that time. And, the culture begins at the top. And I truly believe the three of them set the tone that put my whole team on a path to healing. And they really did take care of us. Yeah. So I am always eternally grateful for all three of them, and certainly Dick at this time.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because in between Kansas City and Omaha, I went to the Harry S. Truman Presidential Library. And, you're the history major here. I knew what I knew about Harry Truman, which is what most people know. But I knew I could have told you Independence, Missouri. I didn't know where that was. It's not far from Kansas City at all. I'm really glad I went to the museum, any presidential museum. I think we might have talked about these before, but it's just a snapshot in America. It's like an archive, if you will, but an American life under that person's leadership. It did have quite a bit on his early life, and I found myself I probably spent a third of my time just reading about his background. And I think this is more about me, because I think I like to know people's roots and how we're shaped and what it is that leads us. But what a life, right? Not having graduated from college and from this, Midwest town. Lamar is where he was born. Then he moved to Independence, and he loved his wife. Since the first time he saw her, Bessie Truman, and she was from a family of affluence. And then his father made a poor financial decision, so they moved to Kansas City, and then they moved back, and then he enlisted in the National Reserves, National Guard, and was a leader in war. I mean, all these things I did not know, but that work ethic that we really take pride in as, I think, an American people, that that honest work ethic, that hard work ethic, that was consistent in his politics. And so I just looked at the rest of his efforts through that lens, if you will. So shout out to the Harry Truman. The S he used a period, but didn't stand for anything.
No middle name. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that now that you say that, that may be a retirement goal of mine. I do love presidential museums, and I have not been to many of them. But as people travel to all check their box of attending all Major League Baseball stadiums, I might have to maybe not one road trip, but I should go
Yeah,
visit those presidential museums. I think I would enjoy that. I have not been to Independence, Missouri, and I
I think you
don't
would
know
enjoy
much
it.
about Harry Truman, but I do think there is. I think people. I think there are some very well known presidents. I think most people, if you said Truman, they would know he was a president. I hope. But there's certainly the Roosevelts, the Kennedy, the more recent ones, Washington, Jefferson, even Andrew Jackson. There's presidents that everyone knows and knows something about, but the lesser known ones were just as relevant during their day and just as influential, and we don't know as much about them. And part of that is we can only teach history if we only have one year
Yeah,
to teach it. You kind of fly through it,
right,
but um,
right.
I'm
Well,
gonna add that to my bucket
honestly
list to head
go
to.
for it.
Yeah.
Something, Haley, as simple as I didn't realize, like Rosa FDR, he was only 63 and he died
Yes.
in the afternoon, like an aneurysm. I mean, of course, you die when you die, but it was just very specific. And he and Truman had only met one on one twice
Hmm.
before his death. Like the reality of who this person that's stepping into the Oval Office, what the role he took, it was like, wow, okay, this is really important, like context for
Right.
how I view, a lot of things. So,
Well, we could
yeah.
do a whole podcast on
Couldn't we? I
any of
know.
these presidents for sure, but there's one movie and one book about FDR that I really enjoyed, and they're very different in tone. Hyde Park is a movie about Franklin Roosevelt. That was his home that he would visit when he was president, and it's it's not comical, although it is. I don't. It's not meant to be satire, but it part of the story is how the blind eye that everyone turned to the fact that he was in a wheelchair, to the point
Mm,
where it is comical that people don't acknowledge it or look at it. They
mm,
just and I'm not describing it well, and the way they do it in the movie is
mm.
really fascinating. But of course, that was a huge part of his life. He was not
Yeah.
able to walk, and that was not showcased ever anywhere during the time of his presidency, and actually for many years afterwards. There was a big debate when they were doing the FDR monument, I guess is what it's
Oh,
in Washington,
yeah.
D.C. Do we show him in his wheelchair? And some
Mm,
people argued no, because he wouldn't have wanted that. He didn't want it at the time. And then some people argued, yes, that's who he was. And we should celebrate that and not hide it, even though he hid it. Anyway, the movie does a really fun job of addressing it in the context of the time when the movie takes place, but also modern day as well. And then the flip side of this, I might have mentioned this before. It's a book I need to reread. It's called The Daughters of Yalta, and it's about the Yalta
mm.
Conference,
Okay.
and the daughters who attend with the big three, and their influence on how that conference takes place and the outcome of it. So much more serious. But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's a fascinating creature, fascinating president, fascinating person, fascinating history, and I'm sure Truman and many other presidents are too. Again, they're just not as well known.
No doubt. Yeah.
All
Well,
right,
thank you for the
spiritual
suggestion.
stew. I don't have too much this week. But I did. I've just thinking about again the loss of Dick Rosenthal, Willie Mays, and then I am attending a funeral tomorrow for one of my son's classmates. He was 20 years old, way too young. I did not know him. He was a classmate and a teammate of my son Edward's, and Edward asked me to go on his behalf just because he's still in the mountains of North Carolina. So I will do that. But just kind of thinking about the families and loss in general, I was just looking for different prayers to think of or to pray with and to share. And I came across, interestingly enough, a Jewish prayer, which, boy, I find many of them are so thoughtful and
Mm,
really applicable. But it's
mm,
just a quick one, and it says, as long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them.
mm,
And this really spoke to me in terms of Dick Rosenthal. He's not someone I've seen a lot over the past 20 years, maybe once a year, every other year, but we certainly keep in touch. But he will live on in all the lives that he touched and influenced, and certainly his family. but with me as well. When I think of what I'm able to do now in terms of sharing my story, in terms of the impact that I hope I can have, I know that is all true because of how well I was taken care of and how well I have healed and just emotionally how healthy I am.
Mm,
And
mhm.
I know so much of that is in part because of Dick's leadership and influence in my life. So very grateful to him, and certainly he will live on in all of the work that I strive to do.
Wow. No greater compliment can you give. That is such a, I mean, that's what legacy is. That's testimony. That's really powerful. And yes, thank you for sharing that. I think that's worth putting in the notes, that prayer. And I appreciate that you are going for your son.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that says a lot. I don't know if he asked you, if you thought of it, doesn't really matter, but I think that that is really what like family is
Mm-hmm.
about. And
It's interesting. He didn't ask me and I didn't think of it. He told me.
oh,
He doesn't have much access to technology. This is a no cell phone camp even for
yeah.
staff members, but
Wow.
I had heard the news and he had heard the news, and he sent a text that said, in part, it shared with me that he had passed away. I'm trying to find it, but then it said, "The funeral is next Friday. You can go on my behalf." Or I'm not even sure it was
Mm,
"you can go." You will,
yeah.
and it wasn't "you will go." He's not that.
Yeah. Yeah. Directive. Yes.
The funeral
Please
isn't,
go.
yeah, if you will go in my place, were his exact
Oh,
words. So he was thinking of it, but I also love the fact, appreciate the fact that he knew I would go and would want to go,
yeah.
and that he knows he would want to be there. That's a hard thing. Death is a hard thing to understand at any age. It is certainly a hard thing to grasp when you lose a friend at age 20. I lost friends at age 18. That was something I really struggled with just the concept of death at that time. So I know that he's dealing with it in his own way and will certainly want to hear
Yeah.
about it to help his grieving and processing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a gift. Yeah. Yeah. Presence is so important. So,
And showing
yeah.
up. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, my piece of the stew was from the second reading on Sunday. You know, I caught it just in there wasn't. So I was at Saint Francis Xavier Parish.
Mm-hmm.
It's at Rockhurst University, so it's a Jesuit parish. Initially, I was going to go later to somewhere else, and I always like checking out other churches. But a friend from Notre Dame Women Connect said, "Hey, join us, for mass if you would like." And I was like, I'm slow moving. I'm not going to be able to get there. And then another friend from Jerusalem Farms, where I was there for the week on a service immersion, said, "Hey, we're going to St. Francis Xavier." So I said, "Okay, I got to go. This is two people." So I went. I'm glad I went. It was a wonderful parish. Anyone that's visiting Kansas City, if you would like to go to a Jesuit parish, it's very welcoming. And the second reading, wherever I had gone, would have been the same, but I was able to catch this without the missalette, if you will. And it's the Second Corinthians 5 through 6, but it's just such an important line in my class, sports and spirituality. We walk by faith and not by sight. And it mentions the role of courage in needing to do that. So everybody wants proof. When I'm asked about one of the key ideas in sports and spirituality is how do we understand spirituality, but what can we see with a spiritual lens? Because we're just, as human beings, as rational, creatures, we're trying to make sense of our reality. And so vision is essential. And we know in sports, vision is so important. Keep your eye on the ball, right? Yeah, just you're focused on, like, even a golfer keeping your head down. I mean, that's like one of the golfing 101. But so much of sport is also not about seeing. And like a no look pass, how is that executed? It's that trust, it's that sense of where the ball is and where it's going to go. Or I think about a swimmer, like, you're probably trained to look at a black line, so to speak, but you have this peripheral vision, so to speak. So we're always seen in different ways. And I think that's really important in thinking about a spiritual life. we are seeing God, we're seeing the sacred, we're seeing Christ in other people, not by like, it's by faith. It's not always by sight.
Mm-hmm.
And so it takes courage to kind of maybe lean into that and to be willing to understand. So thank you, St. Paul. It's a great reminder.
It is, and it reminds me of something that I know we've talked about, you mentioned and we talked about before, which I always think about, which is that is what faith is believing in something that you can't see.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I go back to reminding myself that, it's those some of us, not some of us, the disciples did see, and anyway, it's and they believed, and then we're not at the time initially, but that is what faith
But
is. I just go
Tyson,
back to that definition.
for sure. Sorry, I didn't mean to. And it ties into your definition that, I mean, what you offered, because we are told that death is not an end, it is a new relationship. And I think that takes a huge heart of faith to
Yes.
believe that, because in all literal ways, it is an end, like this earthly, but how is it that you still have this relationship with Colleen or, anyone that we've lost? What does that look like for you? What does that mean? And that's part of our faith,
Right.
is helping us to make sense of it, that it's not just a feeling, it's something that's right,
Well, and,
real.
and even connecting it to the Jewish prayer that I shared is, as long as we
But yeah,
live, they too will live. And what does it mean to live? We talk, certainly the earthly body has passed, but the person and the spirit and everything, the impact that they've had on us, even if you think about when our parents pass, and I know you have yours and I still have mine, thank goodness, but we are them, that we are created from them. And so when they pass, they will still be alive in us because we are them. um, but I also think faith is a choice. We can choose to believe or we can choose not to, just like we can choose to believe in the afterlife or heaven or any of that, or we can choose to just think someone is gone and that's it. I think that would be a
mm-hmm,
very hard, sad choice, but that's still, the faith is a choice
mm-hmm. And a gift
and,
too.
and a gift.
It's given, it's cultivated, it's appreciated. And one of my students was deciding between Notre Dame and another school. And I'm thrilled that he chose Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And I was writing him a note, and he's just a person of faith. And part of me wanted to write, I was writing, I hope you're challenged, like that's a good thing. And part of
Yes.
me almost wanted to write, I hope you lose your faith and I hope you find it, like that is part of the growth
Mm-hmm.
process.
Mm-hmm.
Like if that happens, it's okay. I don't want please let me be very literal here. I don't want anyone to lose their faith. I think it's that important. But if you do, it's, I mean, it's dynamic. It's not something that has to stay. It's right. It's in motion. It's not static.
Well,
So
well, but I think another way you could say, deliver that message without saying,
yeah,
I hope you lose your faith, is exactly what
yeah,
you said. I hope you're challenged in your faith, really.
yeah,
Because
right.
what you want for him is to choose it again and again, to have the faith and to believe. And I think when we're challenged in our faith, just like when we're challenged in anything, we have to really look hard at how we feel about it. And do I want to choose this? And is this the right choice? So, what I'm hearing you say is, it's not
Yeah,
so much you want him to lose it, you just want him to
right.
find it over and over and over. and
Yeah.
and so when you say, I hope you're challenged, I think faith is included in that. He can certainly be challenged academically. We grow when we're challenged, and
Hmm.
that's what we want.
Yeah.
You want him to grow in his faith and grow academically and socially. So it's
Yeah.
you did share that message with him, just in a different form.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Sounds
So
like a golf game, Haley.
well, we didn't
A
even talk about
challenge.
golf. I mean, we have to
Yeah,
mention I watched more holes of golf at the end of the US Open than I think I have ever watched.
I was
And
very proud of you.
thank you. I think I was just waiting for something else to start, but that's okay. And then it was actually really interesting. The shot, they can't putt. One thing I can do in golf, I think from my many years of playing putt putt or mini golf, is I am a fairly decent putter, which is kind of half of the game. I can't get on the hole for, it takes me like 40 shots, but I was surprised how many putts they missed. Really not short putts, but I would think if you were a world-class golfer, they would be pretty easy to make. But I think it also speaks to the pressure and maybe the confidence and the overconfidence. I'm not sure what it is, but it was pretty fascinating to watch all those putts being missed. And then I have to say the bunker shots and the root with the tree in the middle. It was actually really fascinating to watch. I
Yeah.
know you were probably not happy with who won, but my
Well,
live golfer
yes.
loving husband was very
Yeah.
happy with who won.
It is so Haley and I came up with the word brutal,
Hmm.
or I think you, excuse me, that's let me redact that. Your friend came up with this word because I was
Yes,
like, it's brutal and
yes,
it's beautiful. So
yes. It is not
I hear
mine.
everybody asking those questions about putting. Anybody that's very serious about golf, I have total humility. I would never ask how that person misses that putt. I know how he misses that putt. But all the stats in the world, he made, 496 of them in a row.
Ah,
And then yes, he missed two putts on 16 and 18. This is Rory McIlroy we're talking about here, 4 feet. So understood, totally understood. The question's fair. It's also not fair. It's like all of the above. It was brutal and beautiful. So
yes.
the course is beautiful. The course is brutal. Sometimes both of those things can be true. For Rory McIlroy, when they're showing him waiting on
Rough,
Bryson
rough,
DeChambeau, right? Just
rough.
brutal.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
then, credit to Bryson. That bunker shot was the shot of his life. And he and that's another word. I was blogging about this, Haley. One of our words that we have used in the past is the snark or snarky.
Snarky.
And a lot of people are very snarky about Bryson DeChambeau because, yes, he's a live golfer. And recently he's been trying to turn his image around.
Mm,
And I just think the jury's out. This sports writer I really like called him a phony. And
hmm.
I think it's too soon. I really want to know, can we allow people to change? And, it's like, well, then why are they changing? Is he changing for what reasons? Well, I can't answer that question, but can we as a fan base allow people to change for the good, to try to come around and be a more positive force, so to speak? There's layers to that with the money that's coming in from live, but at any rate, I've come around. I appreciate his emotion and enthusiasm. So I didn't tell a lot of people, but I was cheering for him. But I'm also a Rory McIlroy fan, and so
Right.
it's just hard. It's hard to see anybody lose a tournament
Yes.
and you
Well,
see somebody win,
well,
right?
and I would imagine as a golf fan, you just loved a great match, which I think is what
Yeah.
I appreciated about is what I appreciated about it as well. I will say one of the things I noted again, I think I probably last watched a golf match when I was growing up. But you mentioned he showed his emotion and he did and is that a change in the sport? I don't remember that sort of outward emotion being on display when someone wins a tournament in golf.
Yeah.
And are fans of golf upset by that change? Do they think it's a little rough around the edges, not as stoic? That was one question I had. I love the emotion. It's not necessarily something I showed as an athlete. I remember one time I was filming a video and they wanted me to jump out of the water and throw my hands in the air and show this huge emotion. And I finally said, I can't do that. I would never do that.
Mm,
And I don't,
interesting.
if other people
Yeah.
want to do that, that's great. I love the emotion I'm
Yeah.
seeing on Olympic trials this week. I'm just not an outwardly emotional person. So
Yeah.
I know there are athletes who are not, and I know there are athletes who are, but I've not seen it in golf. I think, like, of course I
Yeah.
haven't watched a lot of golf,
Right.
but I haven't seen it like that. I don't know if that's a change.
Well, yes, that's a great question. I love your question. And there's one singular answer to this question. It's Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods will forever be, he is really pointed to not only
Okay.
bringing fitness to the game, but that, like when he won at Torrey Pines, I mean, there's multiple times where he just gets so jacked up, and he is the one. Now, we'll compare him with Scotty Scheffler, who right now is the number one golfer in the world, has been totally
Mm-hmm.
dominant. And Scotty has said, sometimes people criticize me because I don't show that emotion. And as you were talking about yourself as a swimmer, anyone else, I was thinking about the people I play golf with. And this one woman, when she makes her putt, I actually look away because I don't like her little ritual. But it's so funny to hear you say this because we all have our own
Yes.
reactions. It's true. So yes,
So,
Bryson, he is hard on his sleeve. He's an emotional guy. And yeah, we'll continue to see that as long as he's doing well.
yep. All right. Well, a good takeaway for you, Anne. Let's not be judgy how other people celebrate when they make a good putt or anything else in life. I know it's hard. I know it's hard, but it's the first thing I
Judgy is
heard.
another one of our words. No snark,
No
no
snark
snark.
and no
Yes.
judginess. So
Yeah.
for the
Yes.
takeaway this week, summer goes so fast, but it is a time to slow down. I do have more free time in the summer. I know you do too. And when you mentioned that you had written a note to your student, it did remind me of something that I need to do, and I have it on my to-do list, and that is more outreach. I am such a big believer in the power of the written word. I try to make it a priority to send handwritten notes to those I feel called to, whether they are celebrating something or mourning something or just going through a tough time or just reaching out to say hello. I really do believe in the power of the written word. And I've gotten away from that a little bit more than I would like, especially the past couple of years since I've been more full-time at St. Anne's in my job. So that is one of my goals starting now over the next several weeks, is to just sit down, slow down, and take time to write, not to type, but to write.
That's great. That is such a good goal. I agree with everything you said, the power of the written word. And to loop it back to presidents, all of these presidents, they were prolific letter writers.
Yes.
You see that in common. So there's something there. I've always wondered about that. And summer is a great time to slow down. Our days are longer, even though they're getting shorter, they're still long. Yes. And for me, like my takeaway, and maybe it's like a balance, but I was like, I want to have a sense of like what I want to do each day, because one day can kind of go into the next. And my summer is not that. I mean, I'm not complaining; it's still summer, but I go back in like the first week of August, so it's not like these 3 months that I used to have as a child. But there's things I want to accomplish and do. So I'm trying to just get better about each day to say, but I have my godmother is somebody who journals. She writes down every single day what she's done
Wow.
or what she enjoyed in each day. That's not going to be me, but I thought that's really neat that she does that. So, it's one thing just to do it in prayer and examine at the end of your day, but it's another to write it down. So, I don't know.
Kudos to her.
There.
Well, here's to writing more. Here's to praying more. Here's to being less judgy. And I look forward to connecting with you soon. Have a great couple of weeks, everyone, and you especially, Anne.
Thanks, Haley. Happy halfway. Congratulations. Yay.